Shellee, welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you and great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to giving your guests the resources that will make life a little easier.
Yeah. And I'm hopefully that the conversation we're going to have around financial, about financial stability, financial structure from a college perspective or university's perspective in regards to. And so but first and foremost, I'd like to know, how did you come up in coming across with PhD Lounge? Was it a PR from that you work with, or anyone else who works in your college ready? How did you come up across?
It's interesting you ask. I have an intern, and she was actually one of my students I helped get into college. And she's doing a
Congrats.
project this summer, thanks, where her assignment is to help facilitate podcast guesting in areas that she thinks would be a good fit. And so she's the one who actually found you and set it up. And so I have to give her the credit where the credit is due.
Oh, great! So that's a milestone from your intern, first and foremost, and it's great that she came up with PhD Lounge. It's something that I don't speak much about, the financial aids, scholarships, all sorts of stuff. It's mostly around the PhD culture, but having this opportunity can also expand a bit of the horizons, be open-minded to whoever's listening to who's about to get into college, but also to those who who are about to begin their doctoral journey, but also they have may or may not lack some of the financial literacy skills. So I think it also affects a bit of all the involved students, whatever they're at the stage they're at. And so I think everything is going to be really informative.
Well, I hope so. My goal is always to help families understand how to navigate and get the return on investment from that education. Many people just think getting the education will solve everything. And I like to make sure that people are thinking, the academic fit and the social fit, but also the financial fit. Graduating without massive debt can be a life changing event.
Yes, yes, and I agree with you. There's many students across the world that they were into student loans, and so many of them are still in debt, uh, which is interesting also to tackle about this issue, because I'm pretty sure that the financial situation in college in the USA is rather different from the UK. But so I'd like to ask you, in this sense, how does it work, the US finance system, in terms of getting admitted to college, and how did you see that as a gap that then led you to found and establish College Ready? Tell me a bit more. How did it start?
Sure. Yeah. It's really an interesting story. It started with my firstborn. He was in eighth grade
Mm-hmm.
and he came home from middle school and he says, Mom, I know exactly what I want to do after high school. And
Yes.
I'm like, really? Because I changed my major 5 times. I did not have the best plan.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I want to be a brain surgeon.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay, that's a big ask. And he walks out of the room and he says, will you help me? And that's when it became my duty as the parent to help navigate this process. That was 18, almost 19 years ago.
Oh wow.
That young man went to Harvard pre-med, UC San Diego Medical School, and UCLA orthopedic surgery. So after 15 years of education, he is now ready for getting his real first career, and
Wow.
he doesn't have debt. And so that is something most people don't even think is possible in the United States. I do have students all over the world. We are global, so I do know that it is quite different. in the UK, in Asia. And so it really comes down to, where does the student want to practice? Where do they want to have their career? My first went to Harvard, my second went to University of Alabama, third went to Berkeley, and fourth went to the Czech Republic of Prague in the school is called AAU.
Yes.
And that's when I realized how different education truly is in Europe and outside of the US. So the things that make it so different is, one, the cost, the competition would be number two. Number three is the years that one must do to get their PhD versus in other countries. I was just in Europe last week. My Italian exchange daughter graduated from undergrad from the University of Venice. And while I was at the graduation, it was incredibly different from a US graduation. Even the graduation from Prague was different.
Yeah.
And what was so neat about it is that students were it was very normal for them to go and get their master's. It was like a normal transitional, where in the US it's not. Getting your master's is not as common. Getting your PhD is not as common. And I think it's because of the cost. That is my big guess. So that is what I see to be, I mean, there's many differences, but cost and competition definitely are the two most critical factors.
So it is something that many of us, both parents and students who want to be admitted, but they lack the maybe the skill and the literature to forward themselves into these competitive universities, colleges, and having the lack of skill of cost then will probably impact later over their son, over their daughter, when being admitted into what we call the real world.
Sure.
Right.
And that's really the impact that happens. If a student in the US goes into debt, they take on loans their first 4 years, that can be up to $100,000 a year. They can graduate in 4 years with $400,000 in debt. Now, if they go on to get their MBA, you can add on another 2, their PhD, another 2 or more. And by the time they're done, depending on their career, they may not be able to afford a home or a new car or the basics of life. And so I often help families navigate, how do you not only get into college, but get out without taking on that massive debt?
Right. Well, it's kind of interesting, and because those massive debts come across with interest. Well, you know more about that than me, and all I can know from the British perspective that many of the students they're going on a student loan from a company called Student Loans Company here in the UK, where they request a certain threshold amount to pay their own tuition fees, amenity costs, rent, whatever, right? And they get getting up in debt, but they put up a clause where you can only start repaying up to a certain annual threshold. So, say for example, if there's a student who graduated in dentistry, and if earns above, I think it's above 22 or 23,000 pounds per year, then that graduate will start to repay the loan with a certain amount up to 30 years. Unless that graduate is not able to pay within 30 years, then that will be pardoned. Is there any sort of a bit of similarity in the US finance system?
Unfortunately, it's quite different. The The government has what's called subsidized loans,
Okay.
but you have to make under a certain dollar for household. And it's not very common for that to happen. And
Yeah.
then we get into taking on private loans. Well, when you take on a private loan, you have to start paying either immediately or the day after you graduate, depending on how the loan is set up. Then from there, you have to start paying these large sums. It's not like a cap sum. It's a large sum.
A large sum.
And then, and then from there, even if that student was to pass away, their cosigner would have to continue to pay on that loan. So it's not even forgiven with bankruptcy or death.
Wow. So in this case, that graduate pays a monthly threshold, then he's not able to pay, then they would have born children. They go to university as well, maybe not, and then they continue to repay that loan. Then is that how it
Not
works?
their children.
So
No, not the children. It's the parent or the cosigner. The
Oh,
person
okay.
who said, "You're so young, you don't have any collateral.
Yes.
Why would we give you any money?" So they go after the parent, the grandparent, the aunt, the uncle,
Oh, I see.
whomever can
Whomever.
co-sign for the loan. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a relative.
Oh,
You can
okay.
have a friend if they're willing to co-sign your loan. The reality is that person then is on the hook for that loan if the student does not pay it. So it's going to be paid back regardless.
Yeah. Wow. So it's quite well structured in order for them to take all over their savings, life savings, and everything basically. Retirement as well. Wow. Never thought about it. Again, it's a system that is completely different from the UK. And on my undergraduate, for example, I didn't have any loans. I came up with a national scholarship. So I was lucky on that.
And that's why scholarships are so important.
Yeah.
You know, in the United States, there's 4 buckets of money. There's the independent bucket, there's the merit-based, the institutional-based, and the need-based.
Okay.
So there are 4 buckets of money that people can go after. It's just unfortunate that most people don't. They would rather take on a loan than do the effort to go get the scholarship. And that's the downside to
Yeah.
doing it that way, is they're going to end up with these loans that they have to pay back. All 4 of my kids got scholarships to the point we didn't have to pay $1 for college either. But that's because they earned the scholarship. So you don't just automatically get scholarships in the United States. You actually have to go and get them. And that's where the biggest problem, I think, is.
So also, besides the cost and the competition, the gap also lies, as we said previously, in the lack of financial literacy, but also comes, in addition, research, having the lack of research skills or being uninformed about it. So how you and your team at College Ready, how do you help them, the parents, both the parents and the children, to draw an academic strategy or pipeline to apply both for their college, their dream college, and then becoming financial literate when applying for scholarships?
It's so important. That's really the biggest deficit, is how one does it. So at College Ready, I'll give you an example. I think stories often highlight it best.
Oh, I
have
love
a family
storytelling.
right now.
Let's go.
I have a family right now who have 2 children who are applying to school right now.
Yeah.
And they're both going to go engineering. Well, they're applying to 5 colleges in the US, 4 colleges in the UK, and 2 in Egypt.
In Egypt.
So talk about having the diversity in how you're applying and how different each opportunity is. In the United States, they have to come up with their GPA, their test scores, community service, leadership, extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, and the essay. In UK, it's their GPA and test score. In Egypt, it's their GPA. So just in that one family, you can see very easily how different each system is. In the United States, the schools they're applying to can get up into probably $300,000 in total debt per child. So that's $600,000 for that one family.
Sure.
Right? That's when it becomes like, I don't know too many people have an extra $600,000 just sitting around. And so is it financial literacy? Absolutely. But it's also strategy. This family knows that if they stay in the US, it's going to be substantially more expensive. If they go to the UK, it's going to be a lot less, but still not free. And if they go to Egypt, where they're citizens, they can go for free. So you have from severe debt to no debt. And that's an example of just one family and doing it in that unique path. As far as financial literacy goes, I will say that all over the world, these teenagers are not financially literate. They are not coming out of high school understanding, sure, I'll take on $400,000. And they have no idea what that even feels like.
Yeah.
And that's across the globe. I have not met a student anywhere coming out of high school that will talk about the return on investment of their education. They look at it more as a vacation or something they need to do or where they want to live for 4 years, but none of them are talking about, should I do this major at this school and take on this much debt? And what will that mean to their future? And so my mission is to help 1 million families understand that if you look at the total cost of college before you apply and have a strategy, are you going to stop at a 2-year degree, a 3, a 4, a 6, an 8, a 15? Like, when will it make sense for you to be done being educated? There's some professional people who just like to be educated, and they have a tendency to I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to be because they may be taking on loans that they'll be paying on for the next 30 years in Europe and however long in the US. So I think that literacy is probably the biggest challenge, and that's global.
Yeah, it is. It is global. I'm sorry, Shelly, because I was making a smiling, like small crackling here, but not to take as an insult, because when he said, "Oh, so Egypt would be free education," so I would assume, okay, so that family is more inclined towards the third option because it is for free, right? Generally, and that also came to my mind because I have a friend of mine from Algeria, and he studied there in his town, in one of these towns of Algeria. And he said to me that university there is for free. And I was baffled as well about that. So when you said about Egypt, okay, it was for free, I came up to that as probably going to be inclined for that. But at the same time, they would try to apply for scholarship, right? But you're right about that. That's the biggest hurdle. And my dad used to say that to go to university is rather about having the means than actually the wishes to go to Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, even in Cairo, whatever. It's more for the prestige. But then actually, what's behind that prestige comes also with a bigger price. And I'd like to ask you, how do you make them aware when designing that strategy?
So the first thing that we do is we get clarity from the family, and we'll ask them,
Yeah.
what is most important to your family? Is it the academic fit where your student can go and be very successful academically? Is it the social fit? Will they find their friends, their significant others, the people that they want to spend time with? And then the financial fit. How important for some families, if their child gets in, they're happy to write a check. It doesn't bother them one bit. For other families, they don't have the means to do so, and so it can keep them out. But in the US, at our top tier Ivy schools, if a student gets in and makes under $200,000, they can go to that school for free.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. It comes down to how bad do you want to go to that school, and are you capable of getting in? Because it's incredibly competitive. It would be like Cambridge and Oxford, right?
Sure.
The competition is going to be fierce. And so that the first thing I tell families is you want to be thinking about what is the purpose or reason why you want to go there. Is it to get out with a career? Is it to have that logo that you can put on the wall, that diploma? Is it that your child wants to study somewhere else in the world or in that geography? So there's a lot of interesting things that you're going to be thinking about. And then it comes down to, what do you want to study? Not every college has every major.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. So yes, you may want to go to Harvard, but they may not have your major. So now we have to look at what is the whole fit, and that's where we start. So we start with the family, and we start with what they want, and then we find universities all over the world that fit what they're looking for. There's some students who are like, I want to stay in my hometown. I don't want to go far. And then I have others who can't get away far enough.
Yeah.
So it has to start with the student. And ultimately, if they say money is the most critical factor, then we're going to be looking for generous colleges. We're going to be looking for scholarship opportunities. If they're, I don't care about the money, happy to pay the full price, then we're going to be looking at it very differently.
Oh, I see. But when you're speaking about scholarships, is it both at a national and a local level, right?
So there's global, there's
Global
there's
too.
so much money out there. Yeah, there's so much money out there that it's a bit crazy to think about. Last year, our students, we had 29 students earn $11.8 million in scholarships.
Wow.
In 18 years, my students have earned over $80 million in scholarships. So it's not that the money's not there. It's that families either don't know how to get it, don't want to do the work it takes to earn it, right? Or they just don't care. I don't know what the other option is.
Maybe
But
it's
for families, they're just frustrated.
it's frustrating because I think it's maybe the research and also making the application, how to apply it, because we are expecting that it has to come to the first try. And that not just happens in applying for scholarships, that also applies, well, job applications and aside from that as well, but also when doing a specific research, writing a research paper also requires repetition, going back, doing this all the time. With scholarships as well, it's just having the consistency to say you want to go to this XYZ university, and there are these options. There can be easier ones, but if you want to go to this one, then you have to process that. You have to write it consistently, checking any inaccuracies, and maybe consult Shellee, that will get with her expertise, may help you with the written structure, and aside the mathematical skills in trying to apply and convince to get that biggest scholarship in order to pay those debts and become debt free afterwards. So it requires
And
his repetition all the time.
it's really having a plan.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. If you don't have a plan, it's like planning or not planning to retire. If you don't plan to retire, the money just doesn't appear when you're older. It's the same thing for college. You need to be mindful of what is the plan and how will you prepare for that opportunity. And so we start at College Ready helping the student figure out who they are, what matters to them, and helping them get clarity about themselves. Then we help them understand financially how they want their future to look like. And they're like, what do you mean? Do you want a car every 1 year or every 10 or 20 years? They're like, every 1 year. And, there's just a lack of what it takes to adult. And I think it's because we have some wonderful parents who've done such a great job in taking care of every need. And so the student is like, I have a great life. I just want to keep the life I have. But they don't understand that the consequences, the choices they make can really make a big impact.
So it's more of a first having a holistic approach. What you're saying to me, it sounds like a careers advice to those future minds that you are about to get into it, but you need to also having a reality check of how the world in university works, and then how you have to prepare yourself throughout your undergraduate, and then if you want to go advanced with a master's and then PhD afterwards, you'll get that idea cemented in your mind. But if you don't want to, then how do you prepare yourself after you graduate? So it's kind of a holistic process and a career/financial advice that you take, from what I understood.
It's important for students to have this because high schools do not do this work.
Why is that?
They have high school counts. A big portion of it is just that many high schools globally don't spend time talking about a child's finances. In Europe, if you're not on the economic path, say you're in the engineering path or the medicine path or the art path, there's not a lot of discussion about finances. And in the US, in high school, they don't talk at all about finances. And so here are these kids who are graduating at 18, they don't have that knowledge of what does $100,000 in debt feel like? What will it do to their future? And how will they pay it back? That's what's missing in all of this. So the high school counselors at the schools in the US, they may help them by saying, hey, you're really good at math, go to MIT and be an engineer. But what if that family can't afford for that student to go to MIT and be an engineer?
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about that. They're really missing such an important step. And so we want families to really plan for what does that look like? Will they get an academic scholarship, a testing scholarship, merit scholarships? Like, how are they going to fund the education? And that's what we start to do early on, no matter where the student lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are brilliant thoughts and also insightful information for whoever's hearing out. And I mean, again, I can't say much about it, but just to emphasize that the concept of university and the concept of applying for scholarships should be discussed across high schools. Not, as you said, in the US. There's a few, not at all. I do remember on my side when we're talking about college, we had open days. So I'm wondering, they don't have those kind of those events that high schools promote, right?
The events focus on here are colleges to consider. But there's nobody there who's talking about the cost and how to pay for that. And I think the biggest difference is in Europe, it's significantly less expensive. And so in the US, I wish every high school had the understanding of how much a family can or cannot pay. The problem is they don't know
They
how
don't
much
know.
or a family can or can't pay. So then it comes down to, if the high school's not doing it, then it's got to be the parent.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes a parent doesn't want to talk about their finances with their children. They're either too proud, or they're, you know, they don't want to share that inability to pay. And so it then comes down to they just don't want to talk about it. Or some families don't want their child to even go to college or leave their house. So there's so many reasons why it's an important factor. And so if a family is listening and they're, how do we start this process? The first thing that you want to understand is how much college will cost your family.
Yeah.
In the US, we have what's called the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the document that is going to allow you to take advantage of many scholarships. But if you don't complete it, you now cut off the stream of potential scholarships. There's also in the US called the SAI calculator, Student Aid Index Calculator. And if you go to my website, collegereadyplan.com/resources, I have a free one on there for anybody who's curious of how much college will cost their family. From there, understanding, whoa, how am I ever going to afford that for one child, let alone 2, 3, 4, however many? Now it comes down to, how will you fund the gap? Yeah. How much did you save or didn't save? How much have you, applied to scholarships? What is the plan to not only get in, but to pay for that opportunity for that education?
Wow. I mean, again, it's truly important to understand these. I never come up with these terminologies again, because I'm based in the UK. I never heard about FAFSA or SAIC before. These are new terminologies for me, and there's nothing much I can say about it. But I could say it's too important to have these documents ready if you are US based, and then be informative about these ongoing processes, and that's where you come in with the information you have, and then help them to feel what is really important. Are there any other conditions that they have to meet as well?
So there's some other ways that families can bring down the cost of college. Yeah. And that would be, in the US, taking AP, IB, or dual enrollment classes during high school. I have some students complete their first 2 years of college while in high school. So instead of paying for 4 years of university, they only have to pay for 2. So that cuts down the cost 50%. So there are strategies that families can utilize that will drive down the cost of college. And then remember, if a family truly doesn't have the money, there are 10 colleges in the United States that are tuition free. A student can just work in order to get their degree. They still have to work. It's not, don't do anything. And then there's also the opportunity of going military. For families who are, I can't afford it, they put in their time in the military, and then they can get educated that way. So my goal or my message is, instead of being defeated or frustrated and say, I can't, look at how you can and look at what those opportunities are. Just like my story I started out with, the US, the UK, and Egypt. The US is going to be significantly more expensive, and then the UK, and then Egypt's for free. It really comes down to what's the priority of the family, where they live, where they get their diploma. What does that look like? And it's a family conversation. It's not one that can just be asked randomly. Some parents would not allow their child to go that far, and other parents think it would be a beautiful opportunity for their child to have that.
Yeah.
So it really has to be a personal decision, and as well as finances. What is your family willing to do and what are they not willing to do?
Exactly. And because of all these challenges, which you help them to succeed, becoming debt free, having their own jobs, or maybe even pursuing further education. Do you have any success stories? I know you've shared that you had a majority of your students had around $80 million debt free, right? So
80 million, yeah.
80 million. That's an impressive feat, and it's praised for the work that you've ever been done along these years. But do you have any other success stories that of your students after they graduated?
So there's so many students who are doing this well.
Yes.
But that's where they get support. To do on their own, a 17 or 18-year-old is not ready to make this kind of decision about this kind of money.
Yeah.
Not all, but most. And
Sure.
so a success story that comes to mind is I had a student this past year. She came to us and she says, my family can't afford for me to go to college. So I'm going to go to a community college, which is in the United States, you can go for free at some and very, very low cost at others. So it's a very inexpensive way to get 2 years done before they go to the university. And so I said, well, let's really step into what you can do and not focus on what you can't do. And so we really leaned in on independent scholarships.
Yeah.
So she every week was diligent and she spent 2 hours a week applying to independent scholarships. When she graduated this year, she had $427,000 in scholarships. She will go and make money while attending university.
Wow.
So it's a perfect example of a student who thought they couldn't go, who asked the questions, who did the work, and who ultimately is not only going to college for free, but she's going to live for free at the same time. That's a beautiful opportunity.
And then gets a job, a paid job, and debt free, and maybe still having bits of scholarship from there, right?
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. So she's going to have a ton of opportunity, and she may go on to get her master's degree. She may go on to get her PhD, because that's the problem I see a lot in the United States is when students are graduating with severe debt, they can't afford to take on more debt.
Yeah.
So they can't afford to go and get further educated. I find that most students in the US will actually do it through their job. A lot of corporations here will pay for somebody to go and get their degree. So that's another way of doing it without having to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
And so that's an opportunity. But I have just found that that's really the struggle. When somebody's already in massive debt, they can't go on to get further educated.
Yeah. Because of this whole massive debt, which is, well, no one wants to be in that situation. But unfortunately, many of us become so financially illiterate that we don't have any, most of us don't have any, and the support of having someone who can help us out, help us to get out of that situation. But thanks to you and the College Ready and other branches that can help in dealing this, I believe that the concept of college from a financial perspective becomes a bit better, and it takes that whole weight of stress from being in debt.
It's huge. It could change somebody's life,
Yeah.
and that impact, if somebody wants to go on to be a doctor, that's a lot of debt, right? And they have to be mindful of, is it going to be worth it on the other side? Once they finish, are they going to have the benefit of making enough to have a good life, but also paying back all of those loans?
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that is something that it will take some time. If the student was on loan, then has to figure it out something. And because of your success with College Ready, then you've been on national TV, and I was impressed, and I wanted to know a bit more about. I was doing some research. Unfortunately, neither ABC News or any other television brands in the United States were provided some information about your TV appearance. But because you're here, we're talking about College Ready. How was the experience?
Um, that's funny. I'm not really the experience. It was an honor. So
Yes.
in 2026, I was named the Global Educational Consultant of the Year, which is a
Wow.
huge honor. And I flew to the Philippines and I walked down the red carpet and I went up on stage and I just was like, this was so surreal. It was really exciting to finally be celebrated.
Yes.
But I really give a lot of credit to my team and to the families that I get to work with. But when I was on Next Level CEO with Daymond John, he's a phenomenal human being, and he's very well known and respected. And I was quite excited to meet him. And filming for a TV show is so incredibly different. And so the experience was great, but it also taught me how thankful that I am of the opportunities that I've received. And so my mission has always been the same. I've written 2 best-selling books because I want families to have this knowledge and to have these discussions before they get themselves or their child in debt. And so I use those platforms to really, signal, hey, this is possible. I'm having students do it. It's not impossible. People who make, great money, still it's a burden. And I don't want families to have to use their retirement. I don't want them to have to go into massive debt. But I do think the value of an education is huge. I've watched all 4 of my children have this opportunity to go to uni, and every one of them have grown, and their knowledge base is so huge, and their intellect has been challenged, and there's so many wonderful things. So I would never say don't go. I would just simply say there's a different way that you may not know that I'd like to show you that way. And so being on national TV has given me the opportunity to let families know that it is possible.
But besides national TV, you've also been featured on podcasts as well and other public speaking events.
Yes, I have. I think I did 172 podcasts in the last 12 months.
Wow.
And everybody wants to know the secret. How do you go to college and graduate without debt?
Yeah.
And that's a big deal in the US, even more so than in the UK. And the podcast is such a beautiful way to be able to share the knowledge without having to go from place to place.
Yeah.
Prior to COVID, I traveled so much because I spoke in person.
Yes.
And so for me, one of the benefits of COVID was that our world became so much more accessible via platforms just like this. And now we can share inside the US, outside the US. It's a very open opportunity. And I think that's been the blessing of being able to speak on podcasts and to be on TV network. my mission is, it seems so daunting. It's huge until I crunch the numbers and I'm like, $80 million in scholarship, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's when I feel like the impact is worth the effort.
And then after that, after your several appearances, then you had more parents and their sons and daughters coming up right after.
Yeah, I think people, once they hear that it's possible
Yeah.
to get into their college and out without debt, I think they are interested. They want to know, how can I do that? How can I set my family up for that? I tell families, I did save for college, but because they got scholarships, I was able to use that money towards a down payment for their first home. So it's not that I just use that money just to go and travel, maybe some of it, but not all of it.
No.
That the important part is the opportunities that it provided. And it's because I did the hard work and I looked into, how was I going to pay $63,000 a year for my son to go to Harvard and then have three more children after? It just seemed so overwhelming, and I didn't want him to take on that debt.
Yeah.
So I always say a mom on a mission is pretty fierce. And that was me. I went back to school and I started touring colleges, and I really formulated a strategy that's worked for 18, 19 years to help these families navigate the process. So I just want to encourage families. My kids are no different than your kids, and it
Yeah.
is possible. It's just understanding, do you want to go figure it out yourself, or you can reach out to me and I'm happy to help you navigate that path.
Yeah. And I think that's a cute way of saying that everything is available. You just have to look out for the opportunity. You have to seek those opportunities. If I knew about this, or my parents knew about this 20 years ago, 20 years, no, 10 years ago when I started university, then I would probably have a slightly different outcome. But I'm still happy with the progress that has been done over these past 10 years, when from an undergraduate to then to become a doctor of philosophy. So if I had these bits of knowledge, then I think the story would have a different stage, a different outcome.
And that's what it's all about, just giving you opportunity. So
Yeah.
it has been a pleasure. Hopefully your listeners now are inspired. Now
I
they
think-
know that it's possible.
I do. I think. I hope they'll get inspired, and especially, I don't have my audience. My audience geography. My audience percentage is ranging around the from 20 to 25. I had a few also late teenagers as well, and they were finishing their high school. They're getting into their A levels, and the beauty of this thing, because I also have experience in teaching high school kids about university opportunities, and because we were talking about finance, there was one particular student that came up to me after the talk and asked me about how's university looks like, how's it lifestyle, is it too expensive to go? And the one that came too expensive, it says, well, it would depend on where do you want to go. And you're lucky because you are a UK national, so you pay less than whoever comes overseas. And even though you pay less, you still need to get to hold on about applying for either a loan, that's up to you, or not going to apply for a loan if you have parents that can support you financially. That's great. But then what I said to them, it's better to look out for people who may know about student loans, or how can you overcome that by applying to scholarships. It was a very, very poor statement from mine because I don't know much about it. But I think the best outcome of that conversation was to select where do you want to go, what you actually would love to do, and how can you apply for that university, specific university that you want, with a good admissions application.
No, it's great advice. Knowledge is everything,
Yeah,
and knowledge is everywhere. You just have to be really careful who you ask and what you
yes,
believe, because
especially,
there's a
yeah,
lot of wrong
especially,
information out there.
especially
So,
the internet, 'cause with being
yes,
so too much dependent on screens and this constant bombardment of information that also requires critical thinking. Will be
yes.
another one.
So good. So get the knowledge and have the conversations and then make the decision. That's the best advice I can give.
Yes, yes. And I think this was a great conversation, Shellee, and I'd like to thank you for coming in, sharing about College Ready, sharing bits of your knowledge, your past experience, and how does that reflect to until today, and then your work in the future. If you had a child and parents panicking about scholarships, they don't know. I know you've shared a bit, but in this moment, what would you say to them? What were the first steps you would take?
So, depending on where you want to apply, if you are in the UK and you want to stay in the UK, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But say you do want to come to the US, or if you're a listener in the US and you want to stay in the US, the most important thing you can do is have that conversation with who's going to pay for what.
Yeah,
Because you don't want to assume anything. Remember, an 18-year-old has no assets, so they cannot assume a loan without somebody co-signing. So getting really clear on what is the family budget and how much loans are they willing to take, how many scholarships they're willing to apply for, what kind of colleges they're going to want to attend. Are they generous? Are they stingy? These are all things that you want to talk about on the front side, because the worst thing you could do is apply to a university that you can't afford that is stingy. Because yes, you get in, and no, you can't pay for it. That is a terrible situation to be in. So it's much better to start on the front end before you pick the colleges and where you're going to go, and really talk about what does that look like.
yeah. I think that's a great advice that most of the parents and their sons and daughters who are listening to Shellee will probably do, will probably consult you and do those steps. And
Wonderful.
and I think that's a wrap up. So where can they follow your work?
So there's many resources that I like to give my families, but the easiest thing to do is to go to collegereadyplan, PLAN.info. The info will get you 30 minutes call with myself where I can help you to navigate what does that look like for your family. So that would be my recommendation. And then while you're there, you can check out the website. I have a whole page of free resources. So there's plenty of opportunity to get informed. And then, of course, I have 2 best-selling books that would be helpful for any family who's looking to navigate to come to the U.S.
What are the
for
names
Sandy.
of what are the name of the books?
The first book is How to Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money. And the second is The College Admissions Plan Simplified. Both of those can be found on Amazon, anywhere that Amazon is offered.
I'll make sure to include on the show notes then. So,
So good.
Shellee, thank you so much for coming into PhD Lounge, and thanks also for your intern. Was it Danica?
Danica.
Was it Danica? So thank you, Danica, who, if you're listening, for getting to Shellee and into the podcast and to know a little bit more about you, about your work, and it's a great pleasure. So thank you so much.
It's been all mine. Thank you so much, Lewis. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Likewise. And for the students and graduates tuning into this session, thank you all for tuning in. Share it with a friend, and it's been a pleasure.